Hello all, and thank you so much for joining our webinar today titled The Six Principles of IDEA. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to share about Ask Resource Center. Ask Resource is a family-focused nonprofit organization whose mission is to empower the families of people with disabilities, those with disabilities, and those who work with them. We provide individualized support, collaborative advocacy, training, resources, and leadership development for Iowa families of children with disabilities or special health care needs, ages birth through 26, and the professionals who serve them. So we are going to be covering the six principles of IDEA. The Individuals with Disabilities Act, or IDEA, is a federal law that was created with rules and guidelines for special education. The law gives eligible children with disabilities rights to specially designed instruction in individualized services and supports. They need to benefit from public education. The IDEA has six foundational principles that we have outlined below. The first one being FAPE, second being appropriate evaluation, then individualized education programs. Fourth is least restrictive environment. Five is parent and student participation in decision making. And six is procedural safeguards. Today, we are going to focus on FAPE, which is that first principle. So today, you will learn what the acronym of FAPE stands for, identify key features of the term appropriate, and apply knowledge of FAPE to real-life scenarios. So now we're going to take a short pre-test just to see what you already know. No pressure to get these correct. We are just wanting to understand what you guys already understand. So please take a few minutes and try to answer these true or false questions. All right, we got some people coming in here. All right, we are going to go over these answers. We're going to take this again later after we go through all of the information we're going to talk about today, and then we'll go through the answers at the end. So now I'm going to pass off this presentation over to Susie, and she's going to help us start deep diving into what FAPE is.
All right, thank you, Kelly. And we are really excited to have everyone here for our first webinar of this six principles of IDEA. And the first objective that we're going to talk about today is just to learn what the acronym FAPE stands for. So FAPE stands for Free Appropriate Public Education, and it is one of the most important cornerstone pieces of the federal legislation, or the IDEA. We're going to talk about that today. So let's break it down. What does that free appropriate public education mean? The F in FAPE stands for free. And when we're talking about free, that means it's at the public expense and at no cost to parents. The only thing that parents will be asked to pay for are things that other students are expected to pay for. Moving into the A in FAPE is appropriate. Now, appropriate has not been defined in the federal regulations or in IDEA. It has been defined through some court cases throughout the years. So we're going to take some time to dive into appropriate later on today. So right now we're going to put a pin in it, but just know that the A in FAPE stands for appropriate. Okay, moving into P, public. There are 5 different aspects of public that we want to talk with you about today. The first is that it's under public supervision and direction. So we've added a school to our graphic here to show that the program is under the public supervision and direction. It's run and overseen by public schools. The next is that it's aligned to standards. Now, the standards are these Iowa academic standards. That encompasses quite a bit. The Iowa academic standards stand for the Iowa Core Standards, the Iowa Core Essential Element Standards, the Early Childhood Standards, and then additional standards in fine arts, computer science, physical education, and health. But the bottom line is that the education, in order for it to be aligned to FAPE, it is aligned to standards. Additionally, it's aligned to post-secondary expectations. So when our learners are 14 years of age or older, there are some transition assessments that the team will do to make sure that we have the right goals in place for living, learning, and working for life after high school. So on our graphic, you will notice that we've added a road, and that road symbolizes the Iowa academic standards. The next piece of public is that students participate with same age peers. So on our graphic, we're adding a playground with friends and peers to symbolize that for it to be FAPE, that we are also going to be aligned, we're going to be participating with same age peers. And at a school that they would attend if not disabled. So we added a arrow to our graphic to point to the school. Now, there are cases where students go to special schools and IEP teams are able to make that decision under certain circumstances. However, IDEA has really prioritized that it's important for students to be at the school they would attend if not disabled. All right, the last piece that we're going to talk about is E, the education. So the E in FAPE stands for education, which includes that specially designed instruction and related services that the students need to make progress. So an IEP is really at the heart of this. And when an IEP team gets together, they have thoughtful conversations about what the student needs to make progress, how their disability affects their learning, and what supports are going to help them grow and succeed. So, an IEP team takes teamwork, and it really involves the expertise of both the professionals at the table and the parents at the table. An IEP isn't just a form with boxes to check. It's a plan that's created through collaboration, and it's based on the student's current skills and what they need and potential for growth. So, to help visualize this special education and related services, we've added a vehicle to our slide. Now, it represents how the student is going to be moving forward on those academic standards, but the type of vehicle, whether it be a bike, or a scooter, or a car, or a bus or van, it needs to be specially designed by the IEP team in order to fit that student's unique needs. The key idea is that every learner's journey looks different, but each one is built to help that student move forward. Okay, so we've talked about that first objective, and we want you to take a pause now and in the chat, please tell us, what does FAPE stand for? Go ahead and add it to the chat. All right, we have a lot of people jumping in. Free, appropriate public education. You guys get gold stars today. It stands for free, appropriate, public education. Okay, now we talked about this before. We said that we were going to come back to the term appropriate and really talk about what does appropriate really mean? In other words, what do we need to do to design this vehicle to make sure that it is appropriate for every learner? Okay, the courts have defined this over the years, and so we're going to go through some of the major points that have been defined. First, appropriate does not mean best, but it also needs to be more than minimal or more than de minimis. So if you see on our slide, we've got this luxury car here on the right. It is representative of the best, and the law doesn't require schools to provide the most expensive car or the perfect option. Now, on the other side, we have that broken down car on the left. It's missing a wheel, it has cracked windows, it's got a flat tire, and this really shows what not to do. An education that doesn't move a student forward or doesn't give them a chance to make progress is not okay, according to the US Supreme Court's rulings. So the point is we need to find a just right vehicle, one that's designed to help the child make meaningful progress based on their own unique needs and their abilities. And the IEP must be reasonably calculated to enable the child to make progress in light of their circumstances. Okay, so what does that mean? What does that reasonably calculated mean? Well, the courts have also given us some ways to really identify what does it mean to be reasonably calculated. The first is that the IEP must be individually tailored. Although we've made sure this vehicle is safe and roadworthy, it still needs to have special features just for that student. So on our graphic, we show that we've got our car, it's up on jacks here, and we have a mechanic who is adding some individual pieces just for that learner based on their unique needs. Okay, the next way to assess if a program is appropriate is the goals are appropriately ambitious. Now, that means that the goals are ambitious and they are meaningful for the student. For most students, in general education, progress from one grade to the next is considered appropriately ambitious. But for a child who isn't able to move from grade to grade in the same way as their peers, their IEP goals still need to be ambitious and meaningful based on their unique needs and their potential for growth. Every student's journey is unique, and not everyone moves at the same pace. What matters most is that each learner's goals are tailored to help them make progress along those Iowa academic standards. Okay, the last part of appropriate is that there are challenging objectives. The goals need to be not too easy, but also not impossible. They need to be based on that child's unique needs and strengths, and it help them make meaningful progress. So on our slide, you see that that car is moving up the hill toward that objective, and it's climbing and making steady progress. Okay, so we've talked about these three parts of appropriate. We've talked about that it's individually tailored, that's appropriately ambitious, and that the objectives are challenging. Now, we're going to talk about how we assess if a program actually is appropriate. One is we're going to look at the evaluation. Was the evaluation adequate? Were all areas of concern addressed? Was there enough data that was looked at and put together to make accurate decisions? Um, we are going to be talking next week about appropriate evaluation in our Six Principles Theory series, and so we'll be able to talk more about what it is that makes a evaluation adequate. The next way we assess appropriateness is, was the IEP developed in compliance with procedures in the law? So some of those procedures are, when was the meeting held? Who was part of the team? What points were discussed and how were they documented? And most importantly, were the parents active partners in every step? So those are the ways that we can think about the appropriateness of a program is, was the evaluation adequate? Was the IEP developed in compliance with procedures? Now, we've got some warning signs of how we might know if an IEP may not be appropriate. So it may not be appropriate if goals are repeated year after year. If a goal is repeated year after year, it might be a sign that the students are not making progress and that their goals are not appropriately ambitious. On this slide, we are showing a car that is stuck in the mud. And so just as that car isn't moving forward, a student whose goals never change might also not be moving forward in their learning journey. Next, it may not be appropriate if no changes were made in response to a lack of progress. Now, the IDEA doesn't guarantee that a student is going to make growth. However, there are some assurances that if a student is not making growth, that the IEP team needs to do something about it. So in our graphic, we see that we've got that car stuck in the mud, but we have a team of people, including parents, who are going to do some problem solving and do some responses of like, what adjustments do we need to make so that we can get this car unstuck? And then lastly, it may not be appropriate if the goal was achieved early in the year and it stayed on the IEP for the rest of the year. Now, that just as you can see the goal that the car has made it to the top of this hill, and if there isn't an annual review coming up right away, the IEP team has an obligation to make some adjustments again to the IEP. All right, so I'm going to hand it back over to Kelly. She's going to review our objectives and she's going to help us see how we did on our quiz.
All right, so we have already learned about what the acronym FAPE stands for, Free Appropriate Public Education. You all did great on that. Now we're going to identify, or we already talked about identifying key features. So the first question that we asked is FAPE stands for Free, Appropriate, Perfect Education. And as you guys had guessed, this is false. FAPE stands for Free, Appropriate, Public Education, as Susie covered. That's our school building in the picture. As we learned with appropriate, perfect is not what is needed. We just need progress at the public education setting. So then for the next one, we have FAPE services must be provided at no cost to parents. And this answer is true. The only cost to parents will be the same costs expected of other students in that building. So no additional costs are put on parents for the IEP process or evaluation process. The next one, the main goal of FAPE is to maximize students' potential in the education setting. This answer is false. So remember that the court cases have determined that maximum potential is not required. However, progress must be more than de minimis. So that's our sturdy safety sedan that's going to get us where we need to go. It's okay to ask for things that might seem a little luxury, but please know it is not the requirement of the school to provide that luxury. And then the next one, the IEP is most likely appropriate if it is individually tailored, appropriately ambitious, and has challenging objectives for the student. This answer is true. An IEP is most likely appropriate when all those things are in place. And then our last one, repeating the same IEP goals each year is okay if the student has not achieved the goal. And this one is false. Remember, it may not be appropriate if goals are repeated year after year with no changes. There is an obligation to attempt and make changes to see if that improves the student's education. So we're going to dig into some real life scenarios here, and we are going just one more time to review the image that we have built to help us move forward.
So I'll go ahead and review some of those pieces of the image. So as we review the scenarios, we're going to be asking you what is missing in these FAPE scenarios. And so in order for you to tell us what is missing, we're going to clearly define each piece of this graphic, some of it again and some for the first time. So recall we've got that road and it's on the road, it represents those Iowa academic standards. And that the student is obligated to make progress in light of their disability on those standards. The next piece of our graphic is the beginning of the road. This is the current levels. This shows what the skills the student currently has that align with the gen ed curriculum or post-secondary expectations in living, learning, and working. The next is we've got the end of the road, and those represents the goals. The student needs to be fully involved and make progress in the gen ed curriculum while also meeting the needs that are related to their disability. We have the vehicle, and remember the vehicle is representative of the special education and related services that the student needs. It's specially designed for what that student particularly needs. And then we've got the people in the car, and those are the IEP team. And they are including parents working together to make thoughtful decisions about how the student will make progress. And when the IEP team focuses on the unique strengths and needs, then we know that they are providing FAPE for the child. Okay, so now I'm going to hand it back to Kelly, and she's going to give us some scenarios, and we're going to look at what's missing. Is it the road? Is it the current level, the beginning of the road? Is it the end of the road, which is the goals? Is it the vehicle, or is it the IEP team?
All right, thanks, Susie. Yes, we are going to dive into real life scenarios that you may see. So the first one is the learner is not making progress on their IEP goals while the general or in the general education setting. The special education teacher decides to pull the learner into a different classroom and teach one-on-one rather than remain in the general education classroom. In the chat, tell us what is missing using the letters A, B, and C below. Yes, I see some D coming in for people in the car. And yes, that is the correct answer. We are missing the people in the car. While it may be better for the student, or the student may make more progress in a one-on-one setting, we need the IEP team to make that decision, not just one person on the team. So yes, we are missing the people in the car. All right, our next scenario. At the annual review, the school team suggests keeping the goals from the IEP last year since the learner did not make progress. What are we missing here? Are we missing the beginning of the road, end of the road, vehicle, or people in the car? All right, we got some mixed answers here. We got one B and then a couple of C's here. So the correct answer is the end of the road B. And I can see where a lot of you guys are putting the vehicle because I think it could go in both places on how you want to address it. But in the end, we are missing goals that are appropriate and challenging. We are missing the end of the road here if we are repeating goals and not making sure they are appropriate for the child. But to help address the goals at the end of the road, we do need a strong vehicle for it. So that one is a little tricky. All right, we're going to the next one. The IEP goals are written so that a child can attend Hillside Behavior Academy and are based on how they run the program. So the goals are written for the student to attend a behavior academy, and the goals are written based on how they run the program. What do we think we're missing here? We're getting a lot of mixed answers here, but I think you guys bring up some great points that you could look at FAPE from a variety of different ways. How we have said to answer this question, the answer would be we are missing the vehicle because this IEP is not being written to be individually tailored for the student. They are writing the IEP based off of this presumed school that they want the student to attend. And again, like Susie mentioned, some students, their least restrictive environment or where they learn best is at a specialized school. But the IEP should be discussed and written to support the student and not just assume we know what vehicle will work best for them. All right, and then another one. The learner is 17 years old. The IEP team meets and creates goals for math and reading. The IEP team doesn't have assessment information on living and working to identify unmet transition needs. So what's missing here? All right, I'm seeing some A's and a B. For this one, we are missing the beginning of the road because we don't have enough information to know where we're starting out at. If you are not familiar with post-secondary transition, as Susie mentioned, these are standards based on making sure students are ready for life after high school in living, learning, and working. Because they wrote goals around math and reading, and they have assessments to be able to write those goals, we have an idea of where we can go. But if we don't have if we don't have assessments over living and working, we can't build in accurate post-secondary expectations and goals for them and plan for that. So we really need the assessments to be able to plan or the beginning of the road. So, just for you guys to know, a lot of this information was adapted and received from the Iowa Department of Education, who also did a webinar around FAPE. You can watch their video if you want more in-depth information around FAPE. This is really the surface area of what FAPE is. But if you would like more in-depth information, you can check out their YouTube video. When you get this PowerPoint, it is linked in there. Also, another resource Ask has is our info sheet around FAPE, free and appropriate public education. So that is available through this link or on our website if you would like more information. And now is our time for Q&A. So, what are some questions that you have for us? So,
Good.
the first one we have for you, Susie, is how does FAPE work when a student is in a class or is in class a limited number of hours a day and sent home?
Well, that's a pretty we actually deal with that quite a bit when we have parents calling in to ask. Um, if a student is continuously being sent home, then that is a situation in which you'd want to get together with the IEP team and figure out what is going on. We actually have a resource for that, and we can potentially look through and see if we can drop it in the chat now. But that would definitely be something we'd want to be talking to the IEP team about if the student is being sent home on a regular basis.
Another question we have, did you say expected growth for a student is 1 year per grade level?
Thank you for that question. While I didn't say that it was expected, it seems to be that the standard that was set in one of the Supreme Court cases is that a ambitious goal would be one that would move a student from grade to grade year by year. Now, we do have some students with IEPs who are able to do that. We also have students who aren't able to do that, and so their IEP still needs to be appropriately ambitious and have challenging objectives for them, but they may not be able to make that kind of growth. So I think the answer to that question, Katie, is really it's always that depends, and the IEP team is always in charge of making sure the child is making progress and coming together to make those decisions.
Thank you. The next question is FAPE the same under IDEA as it is in Section 504?
So that is a good question, Molly. I think we can define FAPE similarly. However, for the purposes of these webinar series, we are using it from the lens of the IDEA perspective. And so I would need to dig more into the 504 perspective to answer that in a more succinct way.
When a student has limited hours and sent home, what if it's in their IEP? I'm going to guess like a dual enrollment situation or a shortened day.
There is also a checklist that has been issued by the Iowa Department of Education that teams should consider. If you are talking about that the child, that a shortened day is already part of that child's IEP, there is a checklist that has been issued by the Iowa Department of Education for IEP teams to reference when a student has a shortened day. Um, if one thing you might want to do is fill out a contact request with us if you'd like to talk through your individual situation with a family support specialist. I think that that would probably be really helpful.
I just dropped that into the chat. This is open for anybody who, some of these, FAPE is a very hard topic to cover, and it is hard in those real life scenarios to really understand what is the issue. So if you are having more specific questions to what you are experiencing, feel free to fill out one of those contact request forms, and one of our staff in the business day or two should reach out to you and help discuss this in more detail in a confidential setting. And then we have a question from Erica. What do you do in a situation where professionals are suggesting the child not be in the gen ed setting, but the school will not provide?
So it sounds like, Erica, that maybe the IEP team isn't coming to a consensus. It sounds like perhaps there's some disagreement between where that setting needs to happen for that child's education. So in that instance, Erica, there are quite a few uh, options that parents have when they disagree. We have two different resources within Ask of what to do when you disagree with the IEP team and what else you can do. I don't know if Kelly's going to be able to be quick enough to drop those into the chat, but The idea when the IEP team gets together, they make their decisions via consensus. So everyone doesn't, it's not a vote. It's basically like this is, we come together to make the decisions together. If the parent disagrees and the school has issued a prior written notice saying this is the decision we're making moving forward, there are ways that parents can use their due process rights to move forward and disagree in a more formal manner with the IEP team.
Mhm. Sorry, I'm making sure I dropped in um our dispute resolution form. We have an additional one that is being updated right now, but that should be ready here soon. We are just updating it to some of the new Iowa regulations, but that should be back up on our website here soon. But then we also have, thank you, Alicia, for dropping in those checklists from the Iowa Department of Ed. And then Molly asks, can FAPE include services like speech therapy?
Yep, absolutely. FAPE is part of that package. It's the package of all, these are all the things that the student needs to make progress. And if the IEP team has decided that speech therapy is part of that FAPE package, then that would include speech therapy as well.
That was the last question we have as of now. But if there are any more, we have some time and we would love to make sure we address them for you. Otherwise, if you would like to talk to someone one-on-one, please fill out that contact request form I dropped in. And that contact request form, just so you know, can be found on our website at any time. But today, we have learned about what FAPE stands for, how to define the term appropriate when it comes to FAPE, and we have applied our knowledge to FAPE in real life scenarios. So those were the objectives we covered today. And then we would love to just stay in contact with you. Here is our contact information. Please know we do have an office in Johnston, Iowa, but it is not readily staffed. The best way to get a hold of us is through these phone numbers or through our website. So you can choose either of these phone numbers to call and leave a voicemail in order to get on our intake system, or you can go to our website, askresource.org, and fill out the Contact Us tab, or just check out any of our other resources, events, news, whatever it is on our website. If you have more specific questions, you can always email us at info@askresource.org. But you can follow us and keep up to date with Ask and all things special education. On Facebook, we try to keep a lot of our social media updated. And then you can find all of these webinars that we have recorded and past webinars on our YouTube channel. We thank you all so much for attending this webinar today. If you have any more questions, drop them in the chat or use our contact request form. And we hope to see you all next week.